Welcome to the second video in our Cybersecurity Lab 2026 version. And in this video, we will be installing pfSense. pfSense is an open source firewall and router software distribution based on FreeBSD. It's widely used for securing networks, managing traffic, and providing advanced networking services in both home and enterprise environments. pfSense offers a web-based interface for configuration, making it accessible even to users with limited command line experience. It supports a wide range of features, and as you can see in the diagram, we will be using pfSense as a firewall, and a router, as a DHCP server, and to create two separate virtual local area networks. Okay, to install pfSense, we're just going to Google the pfSense download. And we are downloading the Community Edition. And this is controlled by Netgate. So when we select download, there's going to be a price and you're going to add it to the cart, but the price is $0. So do not pay for free version, the community version of pfSense. So you can go ahead and add it to the cart. You want to select the ISO IPM virtual machine. So in this case, it's the middle one. Make sure you select the right one. The quantity is going to be 1, so you can add it to the cart and go to the cart. And once again, you do not need to purchase it. You can just go ahead and check out. You may have to create an account. Once you've reached this point, you can complete the order. Now, what will happen is you wait a second, it's going to go ahead and give you the link to download. Go ahead and download it. And when you're downloading stuff with Windows, modern Windows systems, it's not a bad idea to go ahead and check. Sometimes it will not download it unless if you verify it. In this case, it did download properly, so we can go ahead and go to our downloads folder. Now I want to point out something here. As you see, this is a .gz file. So that's just an archive file, but it's not the typical zip file that Windows is used to seeing. So we're going to use 7-zip. If you don't already have 7-zip installed, I recommend installing it. But if you right click, then we go to show more options. We want to use 7-zip and we want to extract it to this folder that's called Netgate Installer. And at the time of this recording, this is the latest version. So now that it has finished unarchiving, it created a folder. If we open that folder, there is the ISO file. So that is the file that we will be using to create our virtual machine. So what we'll do now, we can go ahead and minimize this, and we want to select new for virtual machine because we're going to build a new virtual machine. And we're going to call this, and I'm going to name all my VMs 2026 as a prefix, just so I can keep them separate from other labs that I've created in the past. And I'm just going to call it pfSense. And then the VM folder, that is where you want to store your VMs once they are built. Now I'm storing mine in a folder on a F drive called VirtualBox VMs. You can select any place that you want to store these VMs. That means when the virtual machine is created, that is the place on your computer where it's going to be stored. And then the next thing we want to select is the ISO image. That is the ISO that we just downloaded. So I'm going to go to other, and there it is. Or actually we'll go from there, downloads, and there we see it. We'll select open. Now for the OS edition, we want to select BSD, and it will automatically populate free BSD, and we want to make sure that it is a 64-bit. Now we are not going to select proceed with unintended installation. We are going to manually install this. So we can just do not select that box. We can skip over this next section, and we'll go to the drop down for the virtual hardware. Now the first thing we need to set is a memory. Now what I'm going to recommend is to give it at least 4 gigabytes. I'm going to give mine 8 gigabytes of RAM. This is just during the installation. Once it's built, you can pump it back down to about 2 gigabytes of RAM. So depending on your system, you want to give it plenty of memory. And the reason why is the way pfSense downloads and installs itself. It basically downloads the packages from the repositories, and then it goes into cache, which is in the memory. And then what it will do is first it will expand the files because they're going to download, they're going to be archived or compressed, and then it's going to verify that it was a correct file, expand the file, and then start to install the file. So all that is taking place at the same time in memory. So you want to give it plenty of memory, or else the installation will just get hung up. So the way the resources are shown in VirtualBox, you can see I've got 100, it says 131 gigabytes. I do have 128 gigabytes of RAM. It's probably a little more than most of you may have. So I have plenty of RAM to play with, but go ahead and bump that up to 8 if you have it, but at least 4. And the general rule of thumb is you don't want to allocate more than half the RAM, especially if you're using a Windows host. You don't want to allocate much more than half the RAM to all your virtual machines. So I've got plenty of RAM, so I'm putting it to 8. But once I get it installed, I'm going to lower that back down to about 2 gigabytes. That's about all pfSense requires once it is installed. Now for the number of CPUs, I would use at least 2. I'm going to bump it up to 4. Once again, I've got 24 CPUs, so I've got plenty of CPUs, and I will bump that down to 1 or 2 after I have pfSense installed. It's just very resource intensive, as I said before. Not only the memory, because it's downloading everything into the memory, then it's starting to, as I said, it's going to expand the packages and verify the packages and install the packages. So all that's taking place in memory, but the more CPUs you have, the faster that process is going to take place. So I'm bumping mine up to 4 CPUs and 8 gigabytes of memory. Now I want to go down to the physical size. The default is 16. Now it doesn't take much physical size at all. This is what's going to be stored on your computer. But the keynote in the way that VirtualBox does the size is I can go ahead and I'm going to put this to 60 gigabytes, or roughly 60 gigabytes. And then unless if I hit pre-allocate the full size, it's not going to use all 60 of those gigabytes. If it only takes 10 gigabytes, then it's only going to take 10 gigabytes, and that leaves it room to expand, or it can grow up to 60 gigabytes. Now, if you select pre-allocate full size, then yes, it's going to eat up 60 gigabytes of your computer that you can't use for anything else. So best rule of thumb is do not pre-allocate the full size. I'm setting mine to 60, roughly 60. You can set yours to at least 20. Once you've done that, we're not going to select these two, and we can hit finish. So here's the virtual machine 2026 pfSense. It is powered off. I still have a few changes that I need to make, and that is in the settings. So I select the settings, and we go down. Basically, the general settings are going to be the same that we set up. What I will say is go ahead, deselect floppy, and then move the hard disk to the top, followed by optical. So the optical is basically the ISO file. So that's going to be basically a virtual optical drive. And think of it back when we used to use CDs to install applications on your computer. That is the installation CD, is that ISO file. So once we get the pfSense installed, we can disable that optical drive just by deselecting it. Right now, we want to keep it there because during the installation, we obviously need to use the optical drive or that ISO file, but these will boot in order. So make sure you put a hard disk first, because if not, what will happen the first time you go to restart pfSense, if the optical drive is first, you're basically going to create this loop where it keeps trying to install itself every time it starts. Now what we'll do is once we get it installed, we will do a hard shutdown of the virtual machine and then deselect optical. But for now, we want to keep it like it is. And as we scroll down, we're not going to make any changes in the display. No changes in the video memory. Storage. Now we'll go down to network. So for pfSense, we want to set up several adapters. The first adapter, which is going to be our WAN adapter. So if you think about what pfSense is it's acting as a firewall, but also a router. So the WAN will be that connection from our network, our virtual network, out to the internet. So the way we're going to do that is basically we're going to use your home router. We'll be giving the IP address to pfSense. So adapter 1 is going out to your home router, and we're going to attach that. We're going to use bridged, and then the rest should populate automatically. So in my case, I am currently connected by Wi-Fi. So the name of my Wi-Fi adapter automatically popped up when I selected bridged adapter. So once again, bridged adapter means it's getting its IP address. It's basically bridged to your home router. For adapter 2, this is where we'll set up our private LANs. So we'll select enable the adapter, and we want to attach it to internal network. That means it's inside VirtualBox. All the networking is going to take place inside VirtualBox. And we're going to use the name LAN 0. We'll go ahead and change the adapter type to for a virtualized network. Everything else will keep the same. So far in network, we've set up adapter 1. We want to use a bridged adapter, and the default, it will automatically populate the adapter name and type. For adapter 2 is LAN internal network and LAN 0. And then for adapter 3, we want to go internal network again. This time we're going to name this LAN 1. And we'll go ahead and use the paravirtualized network adapter type, keep everything else the same. For adapter 4, we're not going to use, so we're just not going to select anything there. That's really the last connection that we need to make. So I'll select OK. So once again, to review really quick for pfSense, before we turn it on, check the settings. And the big things are the network, where we set adapter 1 to bridge, 2 to LAN 0, and 3 to LAN 1. Both 2 and 3 are, of course, internal network. Okay, something I need to point out. As of the middle of February in 2026, there is an issue with the current VirtualBox and pfSense release that it will basically hang or fail to detect the interfaces when you use the paravirtualize adapters. So when you set the network adapter type to paravirtualize in the VirtualBox settings, pfSense may fail to bring up the interfaces. And this, if it does, it will typically show up during installation or immediately after reboot. What we've discovered is if you use the Intel Pro /1000-MT or similar legacy emulated adapter types, then they will work. pfSense will detect and assign those without issue. So this appears to be occurring because pfSense is based on FreeBSD, and its support for virtual or paravirtualized devices depends on the FreeBSD kernel and the version of the drivers that are included. So while FreeBSD does have virtual drivers, they don't always work well in virtualization environments or with the recent VirtualBox kernel interfaces. So some VirtualBox versions have regressions or incompatibilities with Virtuo that affect the BSD guest. So if you run into problems with a paravirtualized adapter, just use the Intel Pro /1000 adapter, and it should install with no problem. The reason we're still showing paravirtualized adapters in this lesson is because normally paravirtualized adapters are better when using Linux virtual machines because they have increased throughput, they reduce the CPU overhead, they improve latency, and they scale better in multi-virtual machine environments. But they do require the proper guest OS to have the right kernel. So it's only a matter of time before FreeBSD drivers are updated to support the paravirtualized adapters. But until then, you can try to run the paravirtualized adapters. If it hangs up during installation, then go back in VirtualBox Manager and change those adapters to the Intel adapter. And for system, we did make sure that we put hard disk first, followed by the optical. So at this point, we've done everything that we need to do to set up pfSense before actually starting it. So now we're ready to start pfSense and go through the installation process. So you'll see it will automatically start installing. So we'll get to the first screen asking us if we want to accept this. Of course we do. So we'll select accept, and we want to go ahead and select OK to install pfSense. Then it wants to set up the network to continue the installation. We'll select OK. And the WAN interface is that very first one. So we'll select OK. We're not going to change anything. We're just going to select OK again. We do not want to assign any of the LAN interfaces at this point. We will later, so we select OK. And then we will select Continue. As it says, this could take a little bit of time. In this instance, it didn't take that long to get through that part, but there are other parts that will take some time. So what we are installing is the Community Edition, so CE. So we will go ahead and select Install. And we want to go ahead and just continue with the default file system type. So we'll select OK. And we'll select OK here for no redundancy. And this is, you see, it's saying that it's a 60 gigabyte hard disk. That's because that's the size that we set in VirtualBox Manager. So we can go ahead and select OK. And it's giving you one last chance. Are you sure you want to destroy the current contents on this disk? And we'll say yes. Now it's selecting the version of pfSense that we want to install. We want to install the current stable version. We'll select OK. Now it's installing. And the way it installs, as I mentioned before, it is downloading the packages from the repository and then decompressing the packages and installing the packages. So it's going to sort of pause it a couple times or appear to pause because it's going to quit screening or streaming through on the screen. But don't be alarmed. Just like there it said we needed 104 more megabytes of space. Just let it continue. Sometimes this may take 15 to 20 minutes to complete. So unless if you get something that a message that says it failed to install, just be patient and let it run. And this is really, once again, where the more RAM you give it and the more CPU you give it, the smoother the installation is going to go. And as I mentioned previously, you can give it more RAM while you're installing it. And then after it's installed, you can turn the RAM back down to a more manageable size, such as 2 gigabytes, because that will, if you've got a machine with limited resources and we're going to be installing 4 or 5 virtual machines, then you want to save as much resources as you can, such as the RAM. Now this will continue to download each package. You see there's 182 packages for this part that it needs to download and install. So you sort of can see how you're doing progress-wise by looking at on the far left. You see like now it's like 96 out of 182, and it continues to progress. Now it's going to check the integrity. So once again, it's going to go through all 182 packages and install it now. So remember I said it's going to fetch it, which is download it, then it checks the integrity, and then it starts to extract and install. So now we're at package 7 of 182, and it's extracting that right now. So this is why it takes quite a bit of time to install pfSense. I'm going to let this run all the way through instead of pausing the video, because this will give you a more realistic example of how much time it takes and each step it takes to install pfSense. I mean, out of all the virtual machines that we're going to install and configure, pfSense definitely takes the most amount of time to do so. All right, so now we're at the post installation step. It says it's done. So now we can select OK. Now it's wanting us to go ahead and reboot the system. So what I'm going to do now is I'm not going to hit reboot. I'm just going to close the system. So by closing, I'm just exiting out of the window and powering off the machine. And the reason I'm doing that is so I can go back into my settings, and then I just want to deselect optical. This will make sure that we don't create that loop, right? So the optical is the installation file or the ISO, but just like as I used the analogy before with the installation disk, if you install something on your computer and you don't take the installation disk out, basically what it's doing is trying to install it every time the computer restarts, because this is the boot order. So we'll just deselect optical altogether. So the only device we have on the boot device is the hard disk. We'll select OK, and now we will select Start. Now you can close out this auto capture keyboard on the far right. We see pfSense starting. All right, this is what you hope to see when it restarts. So it did install properly. Now we haven't configured it yet, but we do have successful installation. And you know that when you get this menu, and we'll jump into assigning interfaces in the next video, but we have the WAN already has its IP address. Now this should be the same IP range as your home network, because remember, we bridged it to your home network. So it's getting that IP address from your home router using DHCP. So this is the IP range for me. It's a 192.168.0, and it's a /24. So yours is going to be different depending on what IP range that your home network uses. But this completes the first part of pfSense. We have it installed, and in the next video, we will configure pfSense.